And we begin this segment by reporting sad news out of Hollywood, I suppose, or just out of the world of celebrity in general, and that is that Chuck Norris has passed away at the age of 86. Now, it's hard to just put Chuck Norris in the Hollywood box because his resume is astoundingly diverse. He was an armed services veteran, a martial arts champion, a movie action star, and then eventually an internet meme, one of the kind of early internet memes, even by my judgment. He was also had a hit TV show that ran for nearly a decade. So Chuck Norris, no short list of the things he was involved in and the things he accomplished, again, has passed away at the age of 86. And with that news, we welcome in Will Harris, a pop culture journalist. He's going to join us now to kind of break down the life and career of Chuck Norris. Will, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. How's everything with you?
I'm doing great, but I appreciate it, even if it is under sad circumstances.
It is. Right. We wish you were we were welcoming you under a more celebratory moment here. But Chuck Norris's life it certainly had a lot of celebration within it. I'm wondering if you can just give a sense to begin with of the place he held in American culture with such a varied resume. What did he mean sort of to the American populace? And maybe that differs by generation.
Well, as you mentioned offhandedly, I mean, first and foremost, he was an Air Force vet. He joined in '58, was discharged in '62 as an airman first class. So he served his country before he ever became an actor. But before Hollywood came calling, he'd already opened his first martial arts studio. He had won the All-American Karate Championship in '67 and '68. But it was finally in '68 when he made his way into actually a Dean Martin spy comedy called The Wrecking Crew as an uncredited extra. And then '72, Bruce Lee gave him what you'd probably call his first real acting debut in The Way of the Dragon. And from there, it was all immediately just he became a superstar by the mid '70s.
And is there something about that time period in cinema that lent itself to someone with Chuck Norris's background becoming a star? You mentioned Bruce Lee, another person whose background had a lot of variance and who was able to become a superstar. What was Hollywood like in that time that allowed for figures like Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee to become massive movie stars?
I guess you could argue the phrase at the time was kung fu. I mean, that's what really had become a huge deal in pop culture. And then Bruce Lee, as I say, gave Chuck Norris his start, and then Bruce Lee passed away far too young. But by then, Chuck was on his way up, and I believe it was '77 when he made his first leading role in Breaker Breaker. And because of that background he had in karate, he was able to also serve as fight choreographer. And then it just from there it was bam, bam, bam. It was Good Guys Wear Black was '78, A Force of One '79, The Octagon '80, Eye for an Eye '81, and once it got into the '80s, it was if not one, two movies a year, all of them huge box office successes.
And you mentioned how he was also able to be a coordinator there, that kind of able to do multiple things, due again to that very sort of varied resume of skills. I'm wondering what was the perception of him as an actor? How did people view his presence and his films, and maybe even what were his strengths as a performer?
I mean, as an actor, one might argue that he was great at karate, but he had
Correct.
charisma, and that'll take you a long way in this business, obviously. I think, in particular, the Missing in Action series in the '80s, Cable certainly helped a lot with his career, giving him regular airplay, so to speak, throughout pop culture. I mean, he had the Missing in Action trilogy, it became. He had two Delta Force movies, and by the late '80s, he was actually the star of his own cartoon for kids, the Karate Commandos, Commandos with a K.
Again, so many different things that he was able to do, so many different avenues where he was able to be successful. Now, can we kind of walk through a little bit? He becomes a major action star with a lot of box office hits, and he moves on to do Walker, Texas Ranger. When we talk about Walker, Texas Ranger, it's a show that, for me growing up, it was I just knew that it existed. I don't know that I ever even totally watched an episode, but I was just aware of that show's existence. What place did that show hold, and just what kind of television program was it?
Well, it's interesting because it was a career evolution from the 80s where he was this huge box office star. And then the early 90s, it started to slow down, but he was becoming more of a family kind of a star. He did like a movie called Sidekicks, where it was Tim teaming up with a young karate star. He did Top Dog, where it was him and a dog. And then 93 is when he started Walker, Texas Ranger. And it then ran for 200 episodes. And it was a huge mainstream hit, but at the same time, it seemed to be almost a punchline. I mean, it literally was a punchline for Late Night with Conan O'Brien, where he proceeded to have a lever where he would pull just to get a random Walker Texas Ranger clip to show with no context whatsoever, which made it all the funnier.
Right. And only serves to amplify and grow the legend of Chuck Norris. The first place that I ever saw him, and this is just strictly due to generation, was on Dodgeball. Dodgeball was the first place where I ever saw Chuck Norris. And of course, I didn't have any real context for why his appearance there was so funny. But it was the first place I saw him, and I learned a lot more about him after that happened. Did he have, what was his, he has Walker, Texas Ranger, and he kind of moves to a different phase of his career. And then there was a different kind of renaissance. Can you describe where things progressed as we sort of move into the early and mid 2000s?
He became literally a joke, not in the sense that people were making fun of him per se, but as in he was the toughest guy. And these jokes, I wish I had pulled a handful just to relate to you right this second, but it was, everybody had one. There were books of them, literally. And it had reached the point where, honestly, when he entered the hospital yesterday, it was like Chuck Norris has entered the hospital. The hospital is reported to be in serious condition. I mean, literally up to the very end, it was still a great punchline, and it was at anyone else's expense but Chuck Norris.
Yeah, I did pull up a couple here, just a very brief search. Chuck Norris doesn't sleep, he waits. When the boogeyman goes to sleep every night, he checks his closet for Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris doesn't do push-ups. He doesn't push himself up. He pushes the earth down. And maybe my favorite on this list, Chuck Norris can slam a revolving door. So it just on and on like that. It really did become Chuck Norris makes onions cry. It just kind of, he became a very early meme. And just from the reading that I've done today, he also really kind of embraced that. He didn't push back against this new evolution of his stardom. He sort of embraced it. Can you speak to the fact that he was, as you said, one of the toughest guys on earth in the 80s and the 90s, but then he's also the type of person who can be a part of this new sort of thing where he is allowing himself to be in on the joke. I mean, what does that say about sort of his, again, just his persona?
Well, I mean, I think it speaks to a lot the fact that as he grew older, he was able to, for one thing, embrace that, and therefore, in a sense, he was out there in the general public, in the pop culture landscape, without actually having to do a whole lot the older he got. He could actually kind of relax and enjoy the benefits of his past success. Occasionally, he'd pop up and, like, he was on an episode of Hawaii Five-0, and just a quick cameo. He popped up in, I think, The Expendables 2, also just a short appearance, but just enough to remind people this guy was a massive action star, just like the rest of the people who were in these films. But he had a sense of humor about it. He was happy to make reference to it when he made some appearances here and there as himself. And I think even though he had effectively stopped working right around 2000, 2001, he was still showing up in various things online and had a very strong presence even now.
And we talked about Kung Fu a little bit, but I also, and again, let me know if maybe I'm too scattered with my eras, but I think of Stallone, Schwarzenegger, Van Damme, Seagal, Chuck Norris. I kind of, for me, as a child of the 90s and the 2000s, I have this holy grail of a certain type of action star that is if still in existence, certainly different in how it looks and different in the amount of roles that there are now for that type of star. What was that era? Those action stars who were larger than life, who were, unbeatable in hand-to-hand combat, who would go in and rescue a whole town. What was that era? How do you describe that era of Hollywood?
Oh, it was a glorious, glorious time, let me tell you. Um, I mean, honestly, it was great because you could always count on a Chuck Norris movie. Literally, like as I was saying, it was either at least one, if not two movies a year for more than a decade, or better part of 2 decades, honestly. And he also, Norris stands out as being one of the very few action stars who was able to take his big screen success and transfer it to the small screen. Because, like I say, Walker Texas Ranger lasted for the better part of a decade, and you really don't see any other examples of film stars being able to make that kind of a jump at that time of their career. They usually will struggle through a period of direct-to-video films, and that's definitely something that, I mean, Chuck Norris did do that. There's like one or two films in the late 90s, early 2000s that he was doing simultaneous to Walker. But for the most part, he was a huge TV star at that point and didn't even have to do film, really.
It certainly, we keep coming back to this sort of adaptability that he had, which I think in some ways defines some of his success. Adaptability, charisma. He really had all of that in spades. Is there anything else that you want to touch on about Chuck Norris, either Chuck Norris, the actor, the martial artist, or Chuck Norris, the sort of mythical figure that he became? Anything else that we need to know on this, on a very sad day of his passing, but anything else to celebrate his life?
I mean, as someone who grew up in the 70s, I very distinctly remember the Chuck Norris Karate Studio over at Janif, where I was always, as a kid, too intimidated to dare go and take lessons, but I would like win them at various kid events. It was like, get a free lesson at Chuck Norris Karate Studios. So I mean, that he was a formidable figure even before I was able to see any of his films. He'd kind of just embrace the pop culture position that he had even then. And like I say, between the films and the TV series and even the animated series, which I think is available on DVD if you actually go searching for it, he managed to infiltrate all parts of the pop culture landscape, and as a result, he is a legit legend.
Yeah, Will Harris, wonderful to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us to talk about this. We are in the last 6 months strike me as unique, and I don't think it's recency bias to say that there has been more loss of true Hollywood icons here in the last few months than maybe any time I can remember. If we talk Robert Duvall, Robert Redford, Rob Reiner, Diane Keaton, Chuck Norris, even going back to Gene Hackman, that's a little bit before, but is that fair to say? I mean, it has been really it really stuck out during the Oscars, during the in memoriam section, that major, massive
the same thing.
icons.
Yeah, the Oscars, it really was just a punch in the gut to realize how much loss we'd experienced in pop culture over the course of just that last year. And then you even had people like James Vanderbeek and Eric Dane. I mean, people who were obviously known more for television, but still they had major footprints on the landscape, and just that sense of loss is palpable.
It is palpable indeed. It is a very a tragic time in Hollywood in so many ways, but so many people who we also have left indelible marks of art and creativity that we can kind of forever look back on. Will Harris, can't tell you how much we appreciate it. I see what I believe is a Permian Panthers helmet in the background of your office there.
I'm sure I don't know what you're talking about. No, yeah, absolutely it is. I'm a TV critic, and I went to a press tour at one point, and they were literally was sitting on the table. I'm like, well, I'm going to have to bring that home on the flight somehow. And I did.
That's a great piece of memorabilia. I'm sure we'll have plenty more to discuss. Hopefully, we can have you back on under happier circumstances. But for the time being, thank you so much for joining us to talk about the passing of Chuck Norris. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you, sir. That is Will Harris, a special day here for us on Live Impact to be able to have someone who can accurately kind of give us more insight into Chuck Norris's life and career, especially a life and career that stretched for so long and included so many different eras. So we really appreciate having Will on here to talk to us a little bit about that. And rest in peace to Chuck Norris. And of course, all thoughts are with his family and loved ones on a difficult day